Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video we are going to look at how you can go about obtaining the right visa so that you can live in South Korea a stress-free life. This is not only true for South Korea, but it is more important for you to have the right visa if you want to live in South Korea, especially because you are living in a country that does not use English as the first language. It is also correct that if you live in a country like the United States or in any other part of the world, you need the correct visa. But for South Korea, you really need the right visa if you really want to stay in South Korea and enjoy life in South Korea. It also depends on what you want to do in South Korea. So today we will look at the D visa. That's the student's visa. You have a lot of D visas, but the one that many students who want to study in South Korea know is the D2, which is for those who want to do either a master, PhD, or an undergraduate degree. And then there is the D4, which is a language visa. That is for those who would want to go to South Korea to study language. They would have to obtain the D4 visa. And then we will also look at job visas, the E series of visas. And then finally we will end with the permanent resident visa. This is the ultimate visa, and you have many of them, but there are two permanent resident visas that you should really consider if your plan is to probably go to South Korea, study, and then maybe live in South Korea for a long time. If you want to live in South Korea for, let's say, more than 3 years upward, you should consider obtaining a permanent visa. There are two types, like I said. You have the F2, and then there is the other permanent visa, which is really long. The expiration date for the F4 is 10 years. That being said, let's look at this file that has information on the D types of visas. So here is, let's begin with the E visa first, the D visa. The first one here is the D visa. You have D1, as it says here. This one is for those who are into arts and culture. So if you're going to Korea not to study but going for something that has to do with arts and culture, then you need, this is the visa that will be issued to you right from your home country, as the South Korean embassy that is in your home country will issue this visa. And then when you get to South Korea, they will then give you an alien card that will carry D1. And then D2 is for students, for those who are going to be in South Korea for at least 2 years. So let's say if you're going to South Korea for a master's degree, that will be 2 years of studies, then you would get a D2 visa. They would also give a D2 visa, but D2 sub for those who are applying for a PhD. And then there is also a D2 sub for those who are applying for an undergraduate degree. It's very important that you know that. And then industrial trainee, if you're going to South Korea for some training that is related to an industry, then you get a D3. Then there is D4. D4 is for those who are going to South Korea to learn language. Normally, you learn language for a year or two. So that's the type of visa that you would get. Then if you're going to South Korea for religious purposes, maybe to be a pastor or something like that, you would get a D6. And then intra-company transferee, you get that one. And then corporate investor, international trade. And then this is the worst visa that you can get in South Korea. This is the worst visa, the D10. But there is another one that is way crazier than this one, and that one is the asylum visa. If you're going to South Korea to seek asylum, it's This one is not the worst, but the asylum visa is crazy. The asylum visa will not even allow you to have access to basic things like health care. That's how bad it is. Which means if you fall sick, you might be in serious trouble unless you're lucky an organization decides to intervene and then takes you to the hospital and then takes care of your health. If not, it's going to be really, really bad for you in South Korea. Before I continue, please just give me a second. Let me make sure I'm streaming on the other platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And remember that I am always on every Sunday, 8 p.m. South Korea time. And we're talking about scholarships in South Korea, life in South Korea, education in South Korea. We're talking everything about education, everything about living a good life, everything about research, everything about statement of purpose, everything about study plans. Basically, we are here for education. So the D10 visa, because I remember reading a message on my TikTok. Somebody was asking that a D10 visa is a job visa, but why is it that if you're caught working with a D10 visa, they deport you, you'll be deported? A D10 visa is not a work visa. A D10 visa is a visa that is issued to students after graduation. So let's say you went to South Korea for an undergraduate. After 4 years you graduated. If you're thinking of staying in South Korea to look for a job, this is the type of visa that will be given to you, and it's a visa that is issued every 6 months, which means they would give you 6 months, and then within that 6 months you must make sure you're actively looking for a job, which means you must make sure you apply to companies. After 6 months, if you're not able to obtain a job, you have to make sure you make copies of the applications that you've submitted to companies, go to the immigration, and then show it as proof that you've been looking for a job. If you don't provide proofs, they might not give you another 6 months. It's renewable 4 times, which means they would give you 6 months times 4, which is equal to 2 years. After the 2 years, if you're not able to get a job, then you should probably consider going back to your home country, or maybe if you just graduated from an undergraduate degree, you might decide now to look for a master's degree and then continue with studies. So that's the D10 visa. It does not allow you to work. It gives you the permission to stay in the country legally. You have access to health care, but the problem is that you don't get any discount. So for example, insurance right now in South Korea for D2, that student visa, is about 66,000. Every year it keeps on going up, 66,000 Korean won. But for D10 students, it is more than 100,000. It's more than 120,000 Korean won. So you don't have a job, but you're paying more to keep your insurance. That's why I said it's a bad visa. And then if it happens that you decide to look for a company that is looking for people to work, and they decide that, okay, you should work with them with your D10 visa, the immigration always has a policy of visiting companies. Surprisingly, if it happens that they should go to your company and they catch you working, this is instant deportation for this visa. For students, because you have a student status, they would at least allow you to complete your studies, but you would be fined. You could be fined 500,000 Korean won or 1 million Korean won, and you would have to sign an undertaking stating that if you're caught working next time, you could be deported even if you have not yet completed your degree program. So at least there is a bit of leniency with the student visa, but For the job seeker visa, there is nothing like leniency. You get deported instantaneously. So I said it's not a good visa, and it's not a job visa. It's a visa that tells you to stay, enables you to stay in the country and then continue looking for a job upon graduation from either your undergraduate, master, or PhD. And then next one now is the e-visas. The e-visas. So if you are a professor in Korea, you get an E1. And then if you have a foreign language instructor, be it teaching French, English, or any other language. So for those people from the United States who are teaching English in Korea, they have an E2 visa. For those people who are teaching in universities in South Korea, they have an E1 visa. And then for those who are into research, they have an E3 visa. And then technical instructors have an E4, professionals E5, arts and performance E6, special occupation E7. These visas are the best visas to get, but not the very, very best. But they can easily lead you to a permanent resident, which is what we are focused on in this video today. Because a permanent visa is the best visa that you can get in South Korea. In most cases, it does not limit you on the type of jobs that you can do in South Korea. For example, a D2 visa does not allow you to work in South Korea. A D2 visa, let's go back to the D types of visa. All of these visas, all the D series of visas, as you see them here, they do not allow you to work in South Korea. So do not be fooled. All of the D visas, D2, D4, this one, you are not allowed to work in South Korea. You're not working legally. For example, for a D2 visa, so if you're going to South Korea for an undergraduate or a master's or PhD, know that if you want to work in South Korea, you need to seek approval from your university, from your international office, and also from your professor. For example, if the policy of the university is that international students are not all authorized to work, they have to focus on their studies, especially if you are in the country on a fully funded scholarship. They will say the scholarship and the monthly allowances that they are offering to you is more than enough for you to focus on your education. That will mean you have to focus on your education. You do not have the authority to get a job, part-time job. Let's not talk of full-time job, because you cannot do a full-time job while studying. You'll not be able to do a part-time job while studying. So for the D2, all the D series of visas, you cannot obtain even a part-time job if the university policy is that you cannot get a part-time job. And they would inform the immigration, because normally you're supposed to get a document from your international office, and probably your professor has to sign, or the international office can also sign, and then you would go to the company where you want to do the part-time job. They would also have to sign and then give you their business license, a copy of their business license. You then take it to the immigration for the immigration to confirm that, okay, you can go ahead and work this or that number of hours a week. So that is the process that you have to go through. So for example, the school might accept, the company might accept, but the immigration might decide that you're not going to do a part-time job, and there's nothing you would be able to do about that. So there are many bridges that you would have to cross. And if they've decided and they've not given you the permit to work, and you're caught working, you're in problem. So that is the problem with the D types of visas. But with an e-visa, you can work. Some e-visas will give you the permission to do part-time jobs. It all depends on your contract when you were engaging with the institution to work. So for foreign instructors, if the school that took you to Korea to work says that you can do part-time job, then it's okay, you can go ahead and do part-time job. But if in the contract it says you cannot do part-time job, then you will not be able to do a part-time job. So the e-visas are here. You can go, I'll provide a link to this PDF website. And then now, the most important one is the F types of visas. The first one is the family visitor visa. Forget, you're not supposed to work with this one. It says here clearly, you're not permitted to work. The F2 resident visa, partial restriction on employment, but they say partial. I don't think there is anyone who has really had any problem with an F2 visa because it's a permanent visa. And know that even with the e-visas that we just talked about, for example, a professor visa, if you go to South Korea as a professor and you're teaching in a university, if you have any issues with the university and the university no longer wants you, they would inform the immigration, and the immigration would decide to cancel your visa, which means you might have to leave the country. But there's always a possibility for you to negotiate with the immigration that you need some time to stay in the country and look for another job. That's where I say Koreans are lenient in some way. But let's say you have an E2 visa, foreign instructor, that means you're that means you're teaching English. Also, if you are working for an English academy teaching children English, and if it happens that maybe the children do not like you, or there is a misunderstanding and the parents do not like you, something happens, they can terminate your contract. You would also have to leave, go. So most of these visas on the E series, they are good visas because they will allow you to make money, but you can also lose the visa and you would have to leave the country. So it's very important that you take into account that fact. But on the contrary, F2 and did I say F4 before? F2 and F5 visas are the best visas that you can get. Also, marriage visa is also a good visa, but that will depend on if you want to get married to a Korean, then they'll give you a visa. All of these visas have rules. So for an F2 visa, make sure that you've stayed in South Korea for at least 2 years. So let's say you went to South Korea as a student, you did your undergraduate 4 years, or you went for a master's, did your master's for 2 years, you went for a PhD, did your PhD 3 years, graduated. You count those number of years. This is where you have to start thinking strategically if you want to go to South Korea and you want to make your stay permanent. You want to make your time in Korea longer. The first thing is, know that there is a number of years that you must be in the country before you can apply for any of the E visas. I mean the F visas, that's the F2 or F5. For the F2 visa, once you've been in the country for at least 5 years, so let's say you did your master's 2 years, next thing is you have to make sure you continue staying in the country. So you can probably stay in the country for another 2 years with a D10 visa, looking for a job, and then maybe transition to a PhD. Or you can decide to go and study Korean language, because this is where it is important. For you to obtain an F2 visa or an F5 visa, you need a master of Korean language. You must be able to speak the language because you're living in South Korea. So there are programs like the KIIP, that's Korean culture. I did that program and I've already forgotten the name. KIIP is a program that is offered by the Korean immigration. It's free and you can choose the days. There are many centers scattered all over the country that offer KIIP. That's the area where you can learn Korean language. KIIP will enable you to study Korean language, and then they have their test for you to change from one level to another. So if you pass the test and you have KIIP level 3, 4, 5, the higher the more points, because the F2 visa is on a point basis. On a total of 120, you need at least 80 points for you to be issued this visa. So if you know you have already been in the country for at least 5 years, you have at least even TOPIK, because KIIP, they have their own exams, but you can decide to learn Korean language by yourself, or maybe you went to a language school and you're able to speak Korean. You need to defend that by sitting for the TOPIK, that is the test in Korean proficiency. Sit for TOPIK, obtain at least TOPIK level 3. The higher, more points you get, TOPIK level 4, TOPIK level 5 or 6. If you have more, the higher your TOPIK, you get more points. So you can basically combine those points. I think, because I'm not going to make this video long, next time we'll talk on part 2 for the permanent resident, where I'll bring out the chart where we can like look at it and then calculate the points, and then you can like think about your pathway on getting this visa. Because with an F2 visa, you can start a business, you can do YouTube, you can do social media. There is a lot of things that you can do with an F2 or an F5. But do you know that with a D visa, even a student visa, you cannot do even YouTube or Facebook, Instagram and be monetized? You're not supposed to do or engaged in any activity that is giving you money. That's how far some of these visas can restrict you. You'd have access to healthcare, which is also very important, but anything that has to do with raising money, it's a no-go zone for the D visas. So that's why I said, when you're thinking about going to South Korea and you're thinking about long term, you should start thinking about your pathway, the strategies as to how you can go about making your stay more permanent in South Korea. I did a video last time. I'll provide a link down in the description on how to get a permanent resident by going to some institutions in South Korea like KAIST, DGIST, UNIST. I have videos on scholarships from those universities, institutions on my channel, but I'll provide a link to that video also down there. There are some prestigious universities in South Korea where if you obtain a degree there, it also helps you to easily get this permanent resident, so that you can become creative, because there are some visas that will restrict your creativity. For example, you might be thinking about maybe doing digital marketing, thinking about doing something to raise money while you're studying, but the type of visa will restrict you. Even with an F2 visa, you can still go to school. You can do almost a lot of things. The good thing about F5 visa is because it's just that an F5 visa gives you the authority to at least vote in some local elections, but with an F2 visa you cannot vote in some local election, which means if you go to South Korea with an E visa, let's say for those who are going to Korea to teach English, make sure you stay on your E visa for a long time. Make sure you're earning at least 37 million won plus on an annual basis. You're paying your taxes, you're regular in everything, because South Korea wants you to contribute in the development of the country. Which is why, as a student, make sure after graduation you look for a job. If you don't have a job, there are other pathways. We'll talk about those other pathways that you can get to obtaining an F2 visa. But it's very important that you know that if you want to stay in South Korea for long, you have to make sure you are making those changes from one visa type to another, and then the ultimate goal is you obtaining an F5 visa, which is a long-term permanent resident. As it says here, no restriction to employment here. Sorry, I guess I'm not on that screen. It says here, no restriction to employment. There is almost limitless things that you can do with an F5 visa. So these are the best visas that you will get, F2 and F5, if you really want to stay in South Korea for a long time. So if you're thinking of going to South Korea through a scholarship and you're thinking that, okay, I will stay in South Korea and I will make money, make sure you follow the path. Be in South Korea for at least 5 years. Graduate from a university. Graduating in a university in South Korea gives you more point. But if you already have at least a bachelor's degree, like for those who are going to South Korea to teach English, if you have a bachelor's degree from an outside country, it will give you point, but a degree from South Korea will give you more points. The length of stay in South Korea is going to give you more points. The fact that you're working in South Korea and you're earning money, for those who are in an e-visa, will give you more points. But for students, since you cannot work, if you have an undergraduate degree, you will have points. If you have a master's degree, you will have more points. If you have a PhD, you will have more points. If you know Korean language, you have points. But also make sure you've never committed any crime also in South Korea. There is one thing that came off my mind about this. What other conditions to fulfill? Anyway, this is part 1 of permanent resident visa in South Korea. I'll talk about part 2, more other things. But what I am really insisting on in this video is that if you're thinking about becoming creative, doing things that you really like, making money and not being restricted because of your visa type, make good use of your stay in South Korea. Plan strategically. For those who are going to South Korea as a student, if you're going for undergraduate degree, after 4 years, make sure you already know Korean language very well. Try to get a job. If you don't have a job, aim for a higher topic. 6, 5 will give you more points. That's topic level 5 or 6 will give you more points. The length of stay will also give you more points. You can also transition to a master's degree. You can also target some of those highly regarded universities in South Korea. They will give you more points and it will make it easier for you to obtain your permanent resident. And once you have your permanent resident, you can start thinking about doing any business. A permanent resident does not mean that you take your visa and then sit down not doing anything. They are giving you that visa to express yourself, bring out your creativity, do something that will raise money for you and also enable you to pay taxes and contribute in the development of the Korean society. Which is why with an F2 visa you would have to also be very careful. But with an F5 visa you're almost free of trouble. So you have to make sure you're transitioning from one level to another. But the most ultimate thing is that with these types of visas, you can make money. You can do many different types of businesses. I mean, you can work for a company and then you can do other types of part-time jobs that will make you more money. You work for a school, like for example, teach English, teach in a university, teach in another university as part-time, teach maybe in a school and then have another part-time English teaching job somewhere else, teach for a company and then probably teach English somewhere else later on, or maybe open your own company, open maybe a YouTube channel where you can teach online. There are endless things that you can do with an F visa, but if you have the wrong type of visa, you would have to depend solely on what the university is giving you, especially if you're going to South Korea as a student. So these are things that I think students who are thinking about going to South Korea, because I get a lot of messages from people telling me they want to go to South Korea as a student and they also want to make money. I just laugh. It's not like you cannot make money in South Korea as a student, but the problem is that you're making money by bearing risk. Rather than thinking strategically, there is a goal. You want to attain this goal. you go towards that direction. You're making sure that every year that passes, you're going towards your 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 goal. You graduate from your university with your undergraduate or master's degree, you know it gives you some points. You learn Korean language. That's why I always tell people Korean language is important. You learn Korean language. Why is it no longer focusing on my face? You learn Korean language. You know Korean language will give you some points. You make sure you're not committing any crimes. You study from certain universities in South Korea. And then before you know it, you've been in Korea for 5 years. You can apply for a permanent resident. Before you know it, maybe you have a job. So I would come up next time with the point system, because the permanent resident, this F2 and F5, are based on a point system. In the next video, I don't know when, maybe next week. Remember, I'm live every Sunday, 8 p.m. South Korean time. I'll come up next time with more information on how you can accumulate the points, how many points you will get for being in South Korea for this number of years, how many points you would get for graduating from a university with an undergraduate degree or a master or PhD degree, how many points you will get for knowing Korean language depending on the level of Korean language, and how many points you will get if you are working in South Korea and you're paying your taxes and your annual income is above 37 million won. That's annually. That being said, I'm going to end the video here. If you know you've not yet subscribed to the channel, make sure you do subscribe. But before I go, let me check if there are any questions. Somebody says, please, can you help me with a method of conversion of results to CGPA? And it is the WAEC result. This WAEC result, I know this is coming from Nigeria. I don't even know anything about WAEC results because I'm not from Nigeria. I am your nearest neighbor, but I'm not from Nigeria. So there is no way I can do it for you. But I have a video on the channel where I have explained how you can go about converting your GPA and CGPA. I don't know if you've even cared to watch the video, because the problem is that most students, they don't even watch because they are probably preserving their data. Like today, somebody was asking me a question on GKS on a video that is talking about POSCO. And on my channel, you have videos that are answering the question that that person is asking. So what is the point? I'm doing the videos to help you guys out succeed in doing the things that I was able to do in South Korea. I'm sharing my experience. So what is the point in me coming on live sharing this experience if you guys cannot at least watch and then understand? For your WAEC, we'll think about that. Let me see if there are other comments coming on from other sections. I don't know about Facebook. This person is asking me to tell him about PhD in geography. PhD in geography. If you need a PhD in geography, South Korea has more than 200 going to 300, 400 universities. Search for a university in South Korea that is offering geography, and then apply. If you need a scholarship, try to contact a professor. I have videos on the channel on how to go about contacting a professor. You should watch those videos. They would help you. This one was on the video from last night, yesterday. The person is asking about geography. That being said, I would end the video here and I would see you in the next one. Do not forget to subscribe. Leave your comments. The good thing about me is that I answer every comment, but sometimes the comments are annoying because most of the questions have already been answered in the form of videos, but people don't want to watch. They just want to come and ask questions. So what is the point if I'm making videos and you would not watch? You would just rather go into my inbox and ask me questions. I think you should stop asking the questions on my inbox, be it on Instagram, Facebook. Go and ask the questions on YouTube so that others can also go ahead and read those comments and then they would be informed. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.